and 6, Kyle Lowry with the ring, Kawhi Leonard bringing the chips to the city. I want my chips with the dip, that's all I know. I don't want my chips plain, I want my chips with the dip. So bring them dips. You see what my hat says, not finals, not Eastern Conference, not nice try, or see you next year, champions. Let's go, talk.
That's who did I steal from? Price tags on making the world feel something. They don't have enough to satisfy a real one.
Logical Raptors Fanatic.
Shoot trying to miss. Like every shot.
Logical Raptors Fanatic.
Try to make it so I was gonna act surprised.
Logical Raptors Fanatic.
Love the game of basketball. I mean, it's just more questions you have to ask me in order for me to tell you about.
Logical Raptors Fanatic.
I just can't give you a whole spiel. I don't even know where you're sitting at.
Salute, real ones. Project Truth always. Mike G back here with the Logical Raptors Fanatic. And before we can continue on with our 2023 off season, we have to kind of view back in season to correct something. Obviously, the Dowtin min solved whether you can be ROS, because we have more knowledge about the two-way contracts now. But there's a huge correction that needs to be made from before, and I'm going to show where I got the original information from and the real truth information, and how I need to maybe source some stuff better, because I'm looking to find the most accurate truth on the Raptors, right? And not necessarily so much of my opinion, but I just want to get to the raw data, and that's what I want to feature here more, just going to the raw data and interpreting it from the raw data without any spin involved, right? So we're gonna look back at my size words, or the real facts of things. And obviously there was a confusion around, could we convert Dowtin and all this business, and I thought the answer was pretty clear from the first piece of material, and we're gonna go through it now, so hopefully you enjoy. So obviously, to bring you back to the dates of change video, I brought up the slide that some of the corrections have to entail with, but this was part of it too, right? So the thing I read said that there was a period before the G League season started, and when the G League season ends, that there was a period that this 45, it says like days, so I guess there was a change from days to games, and then now games, like from when they changed it from 45 games, I guess, to 50 games, they changed how this all was equated, because obviously there's still great value in this whole like series here, talking about January 5th and January 15th. It's just like the number of days, and that part is a little bit different. So let's bring up that first piece of information that made me get everything else incorrect. So this is where the insert where I got my information on the two-way contracts. The website is called cndmba.com, and this is obviously dated April 7th. So I'm to show right now it's still wrong currently, even after all the changes. So it was my kind of foresight of not seeing that this guy didn't update his information properly, and that's the problem. Like, it's hard to tell what's going on, because when information's written, then it's been changed. So like trying to look back and trying to figure out what happened or what's the actual rule currently is so hard, because no one explains it fully out until that official things are sent, and then you have to like dive through the serious information, raw data. And that's what I'm talking about. Look for more raw data confirmation, because it's so wish-washy. Even the reporters don't know exactly what's going on. Because one of them asked, doesn't Dowtin have 4 games left? And that was like after or before the Philly game or something like that. And I remember calculating it. That would mean that Dowtin had to sit out 2 games, but he had to sit out 3 games clearly. So obviously even the reporters didn't have the number right. So it's like, it's so weird. Like, no one even knows fully what's going on. Even Aaron Rose made a mistake on the conversion part, and we're going to talk about both parts. So the days and conversion part right now, right here. So 2-way contracts, each NBA team is permitted to have on its roster up to 2 players under 2-way contracts, which is now 3. We're going to go over the new CBA like updates, but I want to correct obviously things that in the past were incorrect, right? So a 2-way player provides services primarily to his NBA team's G League affiliate, but is permitted to be on the NBA team's active or inactive list for up to 45 days during the NBA regular season. Any days during the NBA regular season prior to the start of G League training camp and the conclusion of the G League regular season do not count toward the 45-day limit. So clearly off that information, I built a video trying to explain it out a little bit more visually so people could understand what was said there, right? But the guy didn't update his information, so apparently when they switched it to 50 days, it's just now a standard 50 days, like 50 games pretty much. Like DMPs count towards the 50 games in a sense, right? So there is no days, and they can be up practicing or practicing with the big league team whenever they want, I guess. And then they get paid a base amount of half the rookie minimum contracts at 502K, which we saw $1 million was the minimum for NBA rookie with 1 year of no years working on his first year of experience. So we can kind of understand the money mechanics there, but the days and what counts towards an NBA day and when it was supposed to be happening. Now this part is kind of nullified in a sense of during the whole NBA season, 2-ways can play up to 50 games pretty much. There is no, you can't end your G League season early in order to get more days for the 2-way, because I think maybe teams were looking to abuse that and sit players because now they could run unlimited G League guys every single game of the last like 2 weeks and just tank completely out. So obviously when there's a loophole in the rule, there's changes that are made. So 50 bare games has no ducking and diving. There's no positioning your G League team in a certain way so you can have access to 2-way players for a longer part of the season without the limitation, right? And I thought the Raptors were playing at that first, but clearly now it's just 50 basic games. So now let's get on to the second part, the conversion part. The stuff that people actually really cared about. So we just finished talking about the games and how many games Dowtin was allowed to play, right? Let's get back to the incorrect information or the vague information. So we're going to continue on. A player may not sign a 2-way contract if A, the player has 4 or more years of service, or he will or may have 4 or more years of service at any point during the term of the contract, which we understand. So basically he can't sign, if he's played 3 years in the G League, he can't sign a 2-way for 2 years, because that second year he'll be in his 5th year in the G League, which you're only allowed 4 years in the G League. which we saw Dowtin only have a 1-year two-way because of that, because he already spent 3 years in the G League previously, and this year current was his last and final year of eligibility in the G League. So let's continue on. Or B, the contract could result in the player being under a two-way for any part more than 3 seasons with the same NBA team. So it can't be a 3-year two-way. It has to be 2-year two-way. No two-way contracts may be signed after January 15th of a given season. So that's still correct, right? There are certain elements that are still correct in this paragraph that haven't been changed, but clearly the 45-day limit has been changed, right? So now on to the conversion part, where it's vague, but I've read the terms of how the two-way works before, right? And conversion, right? We talked about it in my first two-way, and that was a real legitimate source. And they were talking in proper terms of when you can convert a two-way, and we saw you can convert it up until the last day of the season, which there was still chatter that Dowtin might have got converted that day, right? So there's still when you can be converted versus what it's converted into. So now that we understand ROS and rest of the season contracts more, based on the Will Barton move, we can analyze this paragraph even better now with deeper knowledge of another mechanic and what you're hoping to convert the two-way into, right? So during the term of a two-way contract, a two-way player is eligible to sign a standard NBA contract only with his current team. A two-way player's NBA team will have the right to convert the two-way contract during its term to a standard NBA contract at the player's applicable minimum salary or for the same term. So clearly doesn't say anything about rest of the season, no ROS. The only thing you could really infer for the same term and the player's applicable minimum salary, but all players have applicable minimum salaries based on years of service. We saw that. And for the same term, that's where it's like, what are you talking about there? So clearly not vague, it's so vague that you can't even really tell what it's saying there, but don't worry. I found the real raw, because this is to ultimately someone's interpretation, right? I assume that if somebody went through the trouble of going through the whole CBA and like transcribing the CBA, they were of a contract merit, like knew of contract language, and were able to write and explain it out, right? So this whole or the PDF that this is in is huge, so they go over like the whole CBA, like rule by rule, but again they leave certain things vague because they're trying to generalize too much. So we need to go to the raw data. And who has the raw data apparently? Lawyers, I guess. So let's check this. So here's the raw. Well, there's an interpretation at the top, but then they have the raw evidence to back their claims. And I think maybe people should have this more, where they have their interpretation, but then they have a link to the real information where they got it from, right? And people can look at both. Okay, if I need just your opinion and I can't really tell what's going on with the raw data, give it to me, but show me the raw data so I can look at the raw data and try to pick out what you're saying and become smarter. They don't want you to get educated, I think, and they just want you to come and get your spoon-fed news, whatever they tell you, however they want you to make you feel. You should feel that way, right? And that's kind of their game. And I just want to kind of cut that kind of stuff out and just try to go straight truth. whatever it feels like, the straight truth, right? So let's continue on here with the standard NBA contract conversion option. Means an option in a two-way contract in favor of a team to convert the contract into a standard NBA contract that provides for a salary for each salary cap year equal to the player's applicable minimum salary and a term equal to the remainder of the original term of the two-way contract in accordance with Article 2, Section 11G. So clearly, yeah, that's a lot different from what the other guy wrote, right? And this one's a little bit more technical, and this one's more, it's dead logical in the sense of its interpretation of, like, yes, you can have a player on a two-way, but it's not always the rookie two-way in that sense of when you convert their minimum salary and all that kind of stuff, right? But a term equal to the remainder of the original term. So that's pretty much saying remainder of the season contract in accordance of Article 2, Section 11G. And we're going to read that part. So, standard NBA contract conversion option. A team shall have the option to convert this contract to a standard NBA contract, brackets, standard NBA contract conversion option. They're like, it's explaining itself out again. The team's standard NBA contract conversion option may be exercised by providing written notice to the player that is either personally delivered to the player or his representative, or sent by email or prepaid certified registered or overnight mail to the last known address of the player or his representation, with a copy to the players association and the NBA. If a team exercises the standard NBA contract conversion option, the base compensation amount is set forth above in this Exhibit 1B will immediately become null and void and for no further force in effect. So pretty much it's saying that the two-way contract and all the stuff that comes with being a two-way player, like 50 game limit, no playoffs, all that kind of stuff, is no longer in effect or force. The player's compensation will be equal to the player's applicable minimum player salary for a term equal to the remainder of the original term of this contract, beginning of the date such option is exercised, and all other terms and conditions of this contract, including the base compensation protection set forth in Exhibit 2, if any, shall remain applicable. Initialized player, team player, uniform player contract Exhibit 2, compensation protection, additional season type of protection, amount of protection, conditions or limitations, automatically stretch provision in the event that the team terminates the contract, resulting in the player's separation of service from team, and the team is obligated therefore to make payments to the player in pursuit to Article 2. Such payments shall be in accordance for the following schedule. So clearly, a lot. It's just saying how what happens to the player's contract and how much they're, because it's guaranteed after, so two-way contracts get guaranteed after a certain date, right? But if you convert them, you still have to pay out that minimum in a sense of conversion. So these are the actual terms of what the conversion is and what's happening in the conversion, and notice how you notify the player that they're being converted. And this is the actual guidelines of how you convert a player. A GM has to read this over before converting a player, and then go to Exhibit 2 and read all the minimum stuff, because Exhibit 2 is probably a minimum or whatever, you know what I mean? Exhibit 1B is is part of the two-way contract part. So like there are different parts that apply, and you can see how a lawyer was actually able to source the real information so we can get the definitive answer. Dowtin could have been ROS. So with that, we know the answer. He could have been converted and we could have stayed under luxury. So why didn't they? And clearly Masai saw that the energy wasn't right in the room. And Nick, now that we know he's fired, we can say, okay, yeah, he felt that Nick didn't hold the team together well enough. The gelling and his system wasn't working well enough with these players. Because if you think about Nick's system, there is a reliance on shooting, right? You're working to get an open three-point shot so you can get the most points out of the offense, right? And that works well when you have a more experienced, better, well-shooting team. And then you can kind of play into their natural gifts a little bit more because they've tempered them over time. With a younger team, maybe Masai felt we need a more structured system and may use, when things fall apart, they could still go back to some of the stuff that they were using with Nick, but there might be a new system in place, and that will help maybe players get to the next level in a sense of supporting each other and figuring out roles. And I think maybe Nick was a little bit too light on critiquing certain players and getting up in their face and making it like get the energy up in the room more. Like he was a good energy guy and he wasn't like a berater in a sense. And maybe they need a little bit, because they're younger, they need a more stricter coach. And maybe, who knows, we got to see the changes. So now we've known how Nick has coached, but what are the things that Nick was told to do versus he did on his own? We're going to see with the new coach, because obviously there are going to be changes, and then we'll hear Masai's commentary on that sort of stuff. Obviously Masai felt that he didn't develop the younger guys enough, and maybe that's where that kind of energy comes from, that energizes the vets more. Seeing the younger guys play and grow, and that energizes the whole team, and they get like Raptory, like hungry. Everyone becomes seriously hungry because they all want to do great. So there are a lot of people critiquing Nick, and I have to give them their flowers, definitely for this season, that he wasn't operating good enough. And Masai did what he had to do for us to continue to move forward and move on. He thought the system wasn't tailored to the players anymore. The roster had changed over. We kind of started feeling out the pieces and knew what we had, and now we're going to find a coach that specifies to a style that really accentuates the best attributes in the players we have now. Versus maybe Nick was a better coach for that championship team, and if that championship team stayed together. But now we need a guy, maybe strength is in offense and running intricate offensive systems, because we have heavy reliance on defense now and don't have such good scores. So maybe we need a coach that accelerates the offense more, and then we can rely back on the players because they're pretty good defenders just as is. Maybe some basic defensive layouts can really work with Pirtle in there, and still having some of the read and recover stuff in there, but structure it a little bit more, take less onus off of the defense needing so much energy all the time with that pressure defense. Maybe they still continue to play pressure defense. We don't know. A new coach will come in, and obviously this is where I'm going to end it off, so I'm just going to shout out Raptors Freak Nation and Raptors Freak Lex. I haven't been there for a week because I'm still on my break a bit, and there'll be another week of break, but I'll have something for you guys next week. And don't forget to tune in to Raptors Freak Lex, 9:30 a.m. Eastern always. And he was right about Nick, maybe. like just losing the locker room, but I don't know. There's still a lot of factors. We can't just dump everything on Nick. Oh, now Nick. Oh, Lowry coached to the championship. No. Nick still did great things here. It just his system doesn't fit the players anymore like it used to, because we had better shooters before, and his system relies on moving the ball to get open shots. And now that we don't have guys to hit those shots, his system's not working as well. So we're going to switch it up, and Masai sent that signal, so I'm going to leave it off here. Salute the real ones. Project Truth always. Logical Raptors Fanatic out. Mike G. Mike G.
Oh, man, I love my team. Man, I love my team. I would die for them.
Not just cause I want to, cause I got to. Put the squad on your back, did the impossible. It's only logical, it's fitted from the heart.
Problems hit the gym, they all work out. MVP. Even next season looking like a breeze.